On PM Express tonight, a historic referendum awaits us, and yet it appears nothing is happening, and we are counting down to it. In fact, as of tomorrow morning, we'll have exactly 2 months to that December 17th referendum that will change our constitutional dispensation in this fourth republic for good. It has to do with amending the constitution, holding referendum to allow political parties to engage in the process of electing and participating in the local assemblies. But there's a big challenge. There are fears of apathy, and there is a challenge for those who are campaigning for you to vote yes in this referendum in 2 months' time. Let's break it down for you. We know that a constitutional referendum has been scheduled for this date. This is a key date in our calendar. 7th December. Something major will happen there. You'll be required to go to the polls and cast your ballot in making a decision. It is the amend the constitution to allow parties contest in the local assembly elections as I've indicated. December 17th, just bear that date in mind. Put it in your calendar as you approach that date. 2 months to that date. You recall this was part of the MPP's campaign promise in the 2016 elections, the basis on which you voted for them. One of the key promises they made was to make the position of assembly members as well as the district chief executives an elected one. And the president has been pushing through that particular agenda. It may become a reality after December 17th, not December 7th. Sometimes even myself, I fall in the trap of confusing it with what we have on the general elections, which is a fixed date of December 7th. But this one, December 17th, mark that date because you need to show up and turn out in your numbers to vote. Other than that, well, I'll tell you why the Constitution mandate, the threshold is so high, and the turnout is very, very important very soon. Now, the proposed changes will involve amending. These are the key articles that need to be amended. Article 2431, which provides for the appointment of MMDCEs by the president. This, by the way, is not entrenched. So this is not going to come to you to decide on at the poll on December 17. But however, this one, 55.3, which bans political parties from participating in district level elections, will have to come to you to decide in the referendum on December 17th, though. And so you'll be queuing to participate and vote. Now, Article 55 is an entrenched clause, as I've just explained there, and so that will come to you. And you see the threshold there, 40% turnout. Out of the 40% turnout, you require 70% to vote yes for it to be carried in terms of the president's wish to have parties to participate. And so that is such a Herculean threshold to cross for those campaigning for yes. Civil society groups, including IDEG, mainly because they've been championing this and pushing this through, CDD as well, NCC, have been campaigning for a yes vote, but they have a tax to cross, a huge mountain. There are peers, however, awareness has been very, very low. Also, results fears of low turnout and apathy is a key thing as well. Now, the president last week during his tour of the Ashanti region himself expressed those same fears. This is the man leading this charge. It is his campaign promise, and yet he is concerned that if his MMDCEs, the district chief executives he's appointed, do not do the job and campaign and galvanize, it will fail. And he says if they fail, it will be eggs on his face. It will be disastrous for the party because it is our manifesto promise. We have to show the people in the 2020 elections that we made the promise and we kept that promise by voting yes and amend the constitution. So he's been charging his followers to campaign and get a vote passed. The big questions: will the apathy affect the yes vote in the upcoming referendum? And how do we deal with this? There is also a bit of misinformation that may be clouding this space that we'll try and debunk tonight for you, help break down, and there'll be a series of conversations. This is just the first of them as we approach December 17th. Stay with us on PMS. When we return, my guests will be seated and they will help us deal with these vexed issues.
Good. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20 21 22 23 24 25 26 27 28 29 30 31 32 33 34 35 36 37 38 39 40 41 42 43 44 45 46 47 48 49 50 51 52 53 54 55 56 57 58 59 60 61 62 63 64 65 66 67 68 69 70 71 72 73 74 75 76 77 78 79 80 81 82 83 84 85 86 87 88 89 90 91 92 93 94 95 96 97 98 99 100 101 102 103 104 105 106 107 108 109 110 111 112 113 114 115 116 117 118 119 120 121 122 123 124 125 126 127 128 129 130 131 132 133 134 135 136 137 138 139 140 141 142 143 144 145 146 147 148 149 150 151 152 153 154 155 156 157 158
On PM Express tonight is Dr. Emmanuel Akwete. He is the Executive Director of IDEG, the man who has been, this is really his, his toil and blood, he's put all into this over the years, and finally, almost 2 months down to the finish line. Doc, thank you for joining us.
Thank you
On PM Express. George Bafo, you've been listening to him on local governance issues. He's a local governance expert. He's been in the local governance system for more than 2 decades. Thank you very much for joining us here. We'll be speaking via Skype shortly to the technical advisor to the local government ministry, Dr. Odro Osai, will join us via Skype shortly as well. So stay with us as we begin to unpack a lot that has to do with the referendum on December 17. Again, don't make my mistake of mistaking that with December 7th. Dr. Akwete, let me start with you. I saw an article that I received today. It's a very interesting article indeed. There's a line in there that says, the focus on MMDCEs, barely 2 months to the national referendum on Article 55.3 is rather misplaced and confusing. Please explain that.
Thank you very much. You know, for some time now, several months, I think the dominant message that has gone out on MMDC, on the referendum, is that it's a referendum on the election of MMDCEs. Okay, and then later on, the word partisan was added to it. Okay, it's a referendum on partisan election of MMDCEs. It is true that the election of MMDCEs was what the MPP as governing party put forward in its manifesto and wanted delivered. But the president, in his wisdom, and what I consider to be in the supreme national interest, had known the local government system in his own writings and speeches. If you read it from about 2013 onwards, you find him pointing out some of the challenges in the local government system. So he came out with the idea that it is important to amend Article 55.3 before the elections take place. So it was like 55.3 is the precondition.
So what is
the question is that 55.3 simply is the rule, okay, that says that political parties can do everything. They can campaign, but they should not sponsor candidates for assembly elections, okay, or even put up their own candidates, period. Okay, and we've practiced that for 27 years, okay, under the Fourth Republic. But you might also know that actually, indeed, political parties have not participated in local government elections since about 1958 or 59. So it's a long time, 60 years plus, and so on. So we have a tradition of excluding them. But on this particular note, the referendum is not about elections. The referendum is about changing that rule we've referred to, to decide. The president has given us opportunity to decide whether the parties that have been excluded, which we have excluded from sponsoring candidates in assembly elections and so on, ought to now be allowed, or we ought to keep the exclusion. So it deals specifically with a rule, and which rule, if we say, okay, change it, would also trigger reforms of the system, of the local, from which they were excluded, because the system as designed was to keep them out. So if they are coming in, the state is the state of law. It governs by laws. And so you have to look at the laws, you have to look at constitutional articles, you have to look at administrative issues and so on, because parties have a different character. And therefore, we must not put referendum on elections of individuals who may be MMDCEs or assembly members. I think, but they are related. And I think the clarity, the relationship is important. If you amended 55.3 alone, and we do not amend the article, okay, that says 2431, that says that parties should be, MMDCs are appointed by the president.
As a municipal district, metropolitan,
yes, municipal and district chief executives. It will not happen automatically. Okay, because the restriction in 55.3 actually relates to local assemblies. Okay.
So this is where assembly members play.
Yes, assembly, where they are elected and so on. And you say don't participate in our sponsor candidates. But the reality we are living with at the time the president made the decision is that the parties are in the assemblies. I would use the word occupy, you know, occupy Ghana, just to give you the imagery of, they occupy the assemblies. In 2015, NCCE was first to do a survey and to point out that, hey, the parties are in the assemblies. The people they interviewed in almost all across the country said the parties are present. But the law says they shouldn't be, but they are there. And then in 2018, when Afrobarometer published its survey on local government and the sentiments about opinions about it, they also confirmed that indeed the parties are there. The people who live with them says they are here. And we've heard it from politicians. Sometimes the parties will tell you after the assembly elections that, oh, they won here, they have their person here, and so on. So this has gone on for some time. They've occupied it. The question is, can we just overlook them and elect MMDCEs? I think at the time that the idea of MMDCE elections came up, which was, it started around 99, by 20 it gathered pace because President Kufuor said, yes, I'll put it on the cards. But the idea then was not that, I mean, we were not so much lived with the party experience to see the occupation. We were just about 8 years in the Fourth Republic. If you look at it today, at that time, if we had elected them, I do not think even the issue of parties were going to come up because we thought NDC would be the dominant party in 1992 and would be there for a long time. But NDC served for 2 years. NDC was voted out, lost the elections and went into opposition. MPP only served 1 term in parliament and then came to government. Okay, so from there on, the dynamics changed. You had this two-party game, which had gone on to a point where we all admit our smaller parties probably are diminished, and it's these two parties who play the game. So in that context, okay, when you have this occupation of local government in place, and you say, okay, let's elect MMDCEs, you have a force to reckon with on the ground. Whether you like it or not,
there will be opposition.
Oh, not opposition. They will sponsor. They are sponsoring. They are involving in the politics of assemblies where presiding members and so on, and various even representatives, and they don't hide it. They tell you that, oh, we get involved in the primaries. This place is ours, and so on. It's the reality. How did this happen? The same constitution that said you know, the parties should not participate in these assembly elections also says the parties have a right to campaign everywhere. So, for instance, parties must have 2/3 of their offices across the districts. So it legitimizes their presence. And then it goes further even to you know, not only that, also they have members of parliament, constituencies, and so on. And this has gone on for 27 years. So they are an entrenched force that you cannot simply overlook and say in spite of that. So the point I'm making is that we need to change this rule so that at least we would have some openness about the parties and what they do, hold them responsible. At the moment, what happens in the district level, they cannot be held to account. So
that is what December 17 is for.
December 17
is not for the election of chief executive.
No, and maybe let me make this 2 points. For me, what worries me is that it could be that it's a way of telling Ghanaians who can't really process this thing in a simple way that they are related. But the danger is that there are those who would go to the referendum with the expectation that because they've been told it's MMDCE, they might want to see MMDCE on the ballot. And if they don't see it, what happens? They might vote no. And there are those, when you say partisan in Ghana, it is MPP or NDC. It's an MPP NDC thing. Sometimes the small parties come in. And they don't also see them because the referendum is not going to have party colors or party candidates, and there will be no human faces on the ballot. It's a question of, should we change the rules so parties can participate, or we should keep them?
I mean,
so it could be deceptive.
Up until having this conversation, I mean, in the media, we've taken it for granted that, in fact, that's how we frame it. Referendum to elect MMDCEs. That's how we frame this all along. It's simpler to say It's exciting to say, but it's not accurate to say it. What's your own reading of why this has become the entrenched notion of what the referendum is about?
Well, I think that Ghanaians are so much in a hurry to get their MMDCs elected, and that has been the issue that has been on the drawing board for quite a long time. If you recall, during the period of the Constitutional Review Commission activities, it came up strongly, and there were emphases that, you know, Ghanaians, majority of us wanted our MMDCs elected, and that became an issue. But apart from that, over the years, people have clamored so much for the election of MMDCs. So I believe that that has been the issue that is ingrained in the minds of almost every Ghanaian. And for that matter, we are not able to kind of draw a line between election of MMDCs and on partisan basis. Sometimes too, it depends on how, you know, activists have crafted the issues. You see, it must be made clearer that we're going to do a referendum to make district level elections partisan.
So in other words, to make it simple, you might show up in the booth on December 17th, and the question could be, should parties be allowed to participate in local assembly elections? Yes or no?
No.
Yes.
That's all they will be.
That's all.
Yes.
That's all.
That's all. That's like, well, I don't know how they
how they'll frame it, but something along those lines.
That's how it's going to be.
Yes.
But that's not exciting.
Well, that's not
But
exciting.
isn't that a problem? Isn't that a problem?
Yes, that's not exciting.
We'll come to the apathy question and the threshold, how that will play into that, and how to break and achieve. You get the point I'm making, right?
That's not exciting. That's why I'm saying that if you look at the historical processes, the issue that bothers Ghanaians a lot is the issue of getting the opportunity to elect their MMDCs.
My DC, my municipal chief executive, my metropolitan chief executive.
So it's like, if you don't put premium on that, perhaps Ghanaians might not, you know, buy into the principle. Maybe I think that's the issue at play now.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, I've heard that. I've heard people saying that, look, because Ghanaians are obsessed with this idea of electing MMDCEs, unless you link it, they might not go to vote, and so on. I challenge that.
Okay.
Ghanaians are smart, intelligent electorate. And the idea that we can belittle how they think and therefore say we must do it this way. Politics has room sometimes for the game of telling people propaganda, but sometimes you should tell them the truth. These same Ghanaians have pursued their own policy of changing governments. The president serves his maximum term. He's leaving with his party. These same Ghanaians know what demands. In fact, if you tell MPs, they will tell you that they took care of children and youth who did not have jobs and so on, but they lost their seats because the party said, well, we elected you, but where's the development in our district? So we got into thinking, MPs, are they development agents or are they lawmakers and so on and so forth? I think we ought to tell the Ghanaians the truth, because a young man at the last week at the graphic Stambik breakfast meeting said something that stayed with me. He said that to lead people to what they want or give them what they want may be a mark of good leadership, but not great leadership, because great leaders lead people where they ought to go. Okay, so the decision the president made on 55.3 did not negate 243.1, the election. He said there are impediments to the election of MMDCEs, and let us remove them first. And in removing the impediments, he meant that you need to create the conducive environment. There is a law prohibiting them, but they are there. And they are not there just sitting there, but we also know that there is evidence that they are getting involved. Okay, in fact, the 2015 elections, local assembly elections where the vote went up to about 39 or 38 point something, when they did the research and so on, they said, oh, the parties were involved. You know, people do that. And you know what? in all the elections that we've held, when parties get involved, the numbers go up. Even with the apathy and the disappointment with parties and so on and so forth, I'm sure that parties getting involved in the referendum, the numbers will go up. Especially as we sit here now, the NDC has declared open support for the reform.
Because it was also part of their manifesto.
Yeah. Yes,
and the PPP
in a different way. Yes. It not as clearly and strongly framed by the MPP. The MPP itself, as a party in government and so on, supports that, but it also has sections that dissent, who say, no, we want to keep the system as it is. But I think it's natural that this system cannot have everybody liking, the idea that you should amend, because if you amend 55.3, the question is about parties. But for parties to get in, you have to change the system because it is set up not to allow parties. Yeah. And you have to, it's going to affect, for instance, the winner takes all. Yeah. Okay, can you see different parties now in local government, which is the lowest tier of the executive arm, and the president depends on local government to implement his policies and programs.
What will happen if all this goes as planned is we might have an NDC president.
Yes.
But in Adenta, where my constituency is, we might have the district chief executive, who is MPP.
Yes.
And we have assembly members, who are MPP, NDC, across, and they have to govern together.
Yes, but the critical importance is that if you amend and therefore we are going to have different parties contesting, it means that you've increased the number of elective positions in the executive arm of government. At the moment, it's only one. It's only the president, direct elections. Yes. And so if you don't win the presidency...
And maybe the MPs.
No, MPs are in parliament. Okay. They are in parliament, but we're talking about the executive, where the powers really are economic, control over institutions, access, to the institutional channels and all that is in the executive. So it's only one. And if we had remained as we were in, let's say, 1994, or 2000, okay, where one party appeared dominant, the system would work well. Once one party, the opposition party at the time, grew rapidly. Within 8 years, it became a formidable force, and now you see them alternating, the margins keep shifting and so on. You have entered a system where these two giants, we call them duopolies, can no longer fit into the framework because the assumption was that one party was going to dominate for a long time. And it didn't happen. They were in government for only 8 years. And then the second party came, and down, that led us into this 8-year cycle.
Joshua, let's break this down a bit more. So the 243 one, is it? Yeah. The other one. That is not entrenched.
Yeah,
that is something that Parliament can fix.
Exactly so.
Here's the problem with, and then just coming back to what Dr. Kwete has been articulating, the government's position is that is amended before the referendum. The minority in Parliament is fighting that because they believe do that post the referendum. And the argument is simple. If you change 2431, which exactly will take away the power of the president to appoint a DC or MC, and you go to the referendum and you lose the yes vote, what will happen then? You would have amended it already. The argument is that wait, do the referendum, and then do this amendment post the referendum when you know what the outcome is. Government says, no, we want to do it now. However, they need 2/3, so they can't do it alone in Parliament. What's your own take? Because that is going to feed into, because when Parliament resumes, last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I spoke to Ajia Lima Mahama, and she says when Parliament resumes, they're going to push this through, right? That will then will raise the fears that Dr. Kwete has articulated again, because then all our focus in the media will be the fight between the minority and majority over that amendment. Meanwhile, we are approaching December 2017, which is a totally different question we are going to be asking. How do you read this playing out with 2 months to go?
Well, I don't think this issue, should be that contentious. Because you see, the principle is that we want MMDCEs elected through a universal adult suffrage. That's a basic underpinning factor. And then how do we want to get it done? We want to do it through the partisan processes. So first of all, I believe that we need to amend 2431 so that the principle of getting MMDCs elected directly through universal adult suffrage could be guaranteed.
Okay. Should we do it before?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Okay. We need to do that
before the referendum.
To guarantee the fact that MMDCs are no more going to be appointed by the president. We want to do away with the power of the president to appoint. That should be the first principle.
Okay.
So when the president's power to appoint is taken away from him or is ceded to the people of this country, then we will look at the processes through which the election must go. And that is partisanship. And it's because 55-3 is entrenched. We need to go through a referendum.
But here's the question I'm asking, though. If you do what
to be elected on to pick one for the MC, that is at the municipal level. And then at the district level, the status quo was to be left untouched. If you will recall, the president in his white paper accepted the middle range of appointing 5 persons for consideration by the Public Service Commission, getting them 3 of them shortlisted for the election to take place. And that one was not related to partisanship. The president never commented on the partisanship thing by then. And that was the time of the NDC. So I think that the NDC should feel comfortable when the system is going to be changed, to get MMDCs elected. I believe that that principle, inures to the benefit of all Ghanaians, and that is the...
Can you make that amendment without a yes vote on December 17? Would that work?
No, what we are all...
You need both.
Yes, we need both.
Yes, but that's the affair. That if you do this first and the yes vote doesn't turn out the way you expect, then you would have already changed the constitution to take the president's powers, and yet the referendum would have been against you. Then you have, what situation would you have then?
Yeah, you would have a situation where the president's power of appointment will be taken away from him. We would have elections, but the elections will not be based on partisanship. That's what ultimately it will be.
That's a minority contest.
Yes. First of all, I think this sequence thing can be resolved.
Okay.
But it's driven by mistrust.
Okay.
You see, if you look at constitutional making history or the relationship between these two parties on constitutional amendment, they hardly built consensus and they disappoint each other. You remember that we were going to change the dates for the... And then you see NDC telling you, we agreed, they agreed. They said they were going to, but come the day, and NPP said, well, we think the EC is not ready, so we are not going to vote. But they said, that's not what you told us. In this same case, we've also heard the same argument, coincidentally from the same person who said that, but NDC, you said you were going to support the election of this, and you're good. And now when the day came, you changed your mind.
Still told us as much.
Yes, you see, so there is, I think what we need, there's a mistrust factor because of their own past games. And now you have to close that. The NDC's position is that because opposition to 55-3, is in the president's party, they suspect that there is a game. Those who do not want 55-3 want to rush with 2431, and once they've gotten it, they are unlikely to work hard, to mobilize the 40% and the 75% because they don't want it. And that is one of the important things.
How does that serve the party's
I don't understand. How would that be inured to the party if that's the case?
Which party? You mean the MPP? Well, the
if
point.
That's a scenario that will.
Well, those who are opposed to 55-3 in the MPP say they don't want to share power.
Okay.
They want to keep the status quo as it is.
Okay.
In fact, they will tell you bluntly that why is it that we should this is our turn and so on and so forth. So they see it purely in that. Secondly, there is a new factor in our politics, which the majority leader has been speaking about. The influence of financiers of elections on parties in government.
Yeah.
And not only in the MPP, in the NDC. In fact, we have people who know financiers now speaking about it. Inordinate influence, he who pays, the piper calls the tune. It's happening. Some are even using terms like they are capturing the state, they dictate appointments, who sits where. Competence is not the greatest thing, it's access to the resources of the state, whether it's through procurement or whether it's whatever it is. Somehow, there's real fear that if we do not put the necessary legal and institutional framework in place, and you leave local elections as MMDC elections as individual based, because elections cost money and we don't really regulate the financing, it's the financiers' game. So there are those genuine fears. If the financiers then pay for individual candidates who become MMDCEs, in the executive arm, going to govern with the president, Professor Hoy has said it will lead to chaos. Sometimes some people say it would intensify the corruption, but it's the same financiers behind it because they are controlling people. As a parliament, the majority leader says the majority of those who came in had money bags behind them, but they are not doing the job the way they should. So it's not just parties getting involved, but there are financiers who've seen business opportunity because it is only parties that are recognized to organize and come and take the mandate of the state, the sovereign resources. Control resources, make laws, institutions, promotion, whatever. It's enormous. And so much was concentrated in the executive arm, the president, and how that power. In fact, we want to decentralize that power. We want to devolve it. The Constitution, in I think Article 35 or 36 5D, talks about democratization in Ghana. The true democracy will be where administrative and financial machineries of the state have been decentralized. We are struggling with decentralization that we started 31 years ago. It is more centralization occurring now, rather than going to the next stage of devolution. So what is the president's argument? I mean, if you read his speeches, in his inaugural speech, he said that there appeared to be some consensus. The debate has gone on, but there appears to be some consensus on how to reform the local government because development in the local economies and so on are very bad, and public service delivery and the quality of life. So he wants to devolve more power and resources, meaning reinforcing Article 36 5D. Okay, if he is able to do that, then more resources. He's going to devolve power and more resources.
That's thinking behind 1 million, one constituency.
So that you will see more rapid development, eradicate poverty, industrialize local economies. That's the vision he has. And then secondly, even if you did that, you also have a situation where the parties are present. The parties are there. Even now, the assembly elections coming, you will find out that some parties will tell you, we are doing the primaries and so on. It's open. What do we do? Should we catch the party and lock them in prison? At the same time that the Constitution also gives them the right to be there for national elections. So there is some discrepancy here. And I think that in the attempt to tackle it, we need consensus between the two parties.
Yeah, but how do we get this? On this particular controversy, I think you were proposing how they can get around this.
I think they're close.
I see Parliament reopening. And it's going to be a big
I think if they did that, it would. If they disagreed again, it will affect the referendum because
they've already taken entrenched positions. Just last week, we were talking to the minority chief whip, who says when they come back, that's not something they're going to compromise on.
No, I think when parties take this kind of, you have to get in to bring the compromise. It's brokered everywhere. In every parliament, they start with extreme positions. You talk, and so the important thing is that both parties have strong groups that strongly support 55-3. The mistrust is real. At one time, I think that the NDC, the MPP, really felt the 2-4-3 must go first because nobody knew the position of the NDC. Okay, and for them, they are in government. Imagine what will happen, like the president said. Should they lose the referendum? Is it a vote of no confidence on them? And how do they face 2020? Yeah. So that their stakes are high, and they are the governing party.
From an expert point of view, what should come first? Should we amend 2431 first?
I think because it's now a political issue, for us, we push for the compromise.
Okay. Where's the compromise?
Look, you know that you need the two parties. Let me tell you. You cannot get the numbers to meet the 40% easily if the parties don't get involved or work together. If they oppose each other, you probably would exceed the 40%, but you wouldn't get the 75%.
Even the parliamentary amendment,
then the parliamentary, yes. So in that case, you should build consensus. Consensus is also
where's the one of the in this line?
Oh, it is. Do you know that before they went on recess, okay, on 2nd of August this year, the two sides actually went into negotiations. But this time they were raising, we've done the research, they were raising the bar, okay, for trust, where they wanted to sign documents, and if you don't comply, what do we do? I think the gap, if you had done it in July, amended 243, and you were doing 55.3 on the 17th of December, you say there's about 5 months gap, which made people feel uneasy. But I think the gap has closed.
We don't have time now.
Yeah. We don't have time, but I think they will rise up to do the right. They need some mediation would help.
I really like your confidence that this
because our parties, you know, our parties in Parliament actually are converging on many things, but the parties outside not necessarily, because that's the tradition. Things are changing slowly, but I think both sides realize that what is at stake is huge.
It's bigger than
any one party. But sometimes, because of the mistrust, the history of mistrust, you need some people to get in to bring them together.
How do we get that middle line? Because that's important. To move forward, we need to fix this and get a consensus. What's your own suggestion on how this can be done?
Well, I think that the two parties have agreed on several issues in the past.
I think the bigger picture, they agree.
Yes.
We need to get the parties involved. Yes. But it's just a case of
which one do you do first?
Which one do you do first?
I
they can agree on that because it's immaterial now. You see, we have 2 months to go. No, it's too. No. I'm coming. It's too. The reason why I say it's immaterial now is that first of all, NDC has declared open support
for the bigger one. The 17th.
Everything, including the 243.
Okay.
They're only saying that put some other elements to it so that it strengthens, it makes the bill stronger, because if you can't just elect, there are also presidential appointive powers and removal of people, all that. What is the meaning? And yesterday, I think the PPP did an article where it articulated some of the issues. Now, I think that we should get the parties together. They can agree on the sequence, because first of all, so long as they feel that they see that MPP is, and both of them are campaigning for a yes vote in the referendum, for instance. There are some of the, the things you do to deal with the mistrust. I think that MPP, a lot of MPP people really want to see 55.3 passed. They want to support the president. The president himself is speaking now. Yeah. And I think a lot more of his address to the nation or talking would help. So there are a number of elements, and because we are getting closer, quite a number of things could happen rapidly, because the two would gain. Look, if you, for example, decided that the amendment of 55.3 or 243, whichever comes first, in a 1 week interval or 2 weeks interval, it's immaterial. The campaigns they've started doing, you can't go around and change everything that they are going to boycott. So the fear that if one succeeded first, like 243, then you are not going to get them to do. Now they are doing it.
Yeah. So this leads back to the big question of Njocheba about the 40% turnout that a constitution threshold sets.
Yes.
And then the 75% of that 40% voting yes for it. Historically, we've never had a local level election, because this is tied to local level, because it's on the same day we have.
No, we've had local level elections, but not with parties.
My question is where the local level elections turnout had reached 40%. We've never hit 40% in one local level elections. Can we pull this off? on December 17th with that threshold that the Constitution says, knowing what the history tells us?
Yeah, but before then, let me make a brief comment
Sure,
on how,
sure.
I mean, the way forward with
On
the
this,
reservations of the NDC as to which one should come first. I believe that the initiative is coming from the MPP, which is in government now. So they will have to put in a lot of efforts in terms of educating the people, you know, providing direction and things like that to kind of whip up the enthusiasm of the people to vote yes on 17th December. It appears, you know, people are not even aware of what's going to happen.
Public education.
It's just like the ordinary these assembly elections that are going to happen.
Yeah, we are committing to do a series of shows. Hopefully, we can whip that.
Well, but the NDC is not demanding, you know, their beef from you. They are demanding it from government. So I think that government will have to commit its agencies to get to the ground, hit the ground running, to prove that indeed they are serious with getting.
So I got the point you're making. If you can convince the MPP that they are really committed to pushing through a yes vote, then maybe they can be on board for amendment of
55-3
and
243.
Because I'm aware that
So their fear is that if I do this for you,
yes,
you might not be interested anymore.
Exactly.
I get the point you're making.
Because the opposition.
I'm aware that Hajia has gone ahead, you know, to set up committees at the district levels to spearhead the advocacy. That one should be hastening up and then get the ground running, hit the ground running to ensure that, you know, everybody is getting the message. If the NDC is convinced that government itself is committed to educating the public to vote yes,
they might get on board.
I think that would be easier.
Yeah. Question back to the main question. History is against us.
The patronage.
In fact, two things against us now. Time is against us. History is against us.
Yes.
In terms of getting the turnout 40%.
Yes.
How do we prove history wrong?
Yes, I get your point. Historically, you are right. The national average for this level elections patronage is about 38%.
Yeah.
And it's on the lower side. I believe the national average is about 82 or so. This time, I am on the ground. I am privy to the fact that the enthusiasm of the people, you know, in going to vote
December
for
17th.
Yes, especially with, I mean, getting the right people to mount the assembly, you know, membership. It's like people are so much keen to do that.
Okay.
They want to make sure that this time they elect the right people to the assemblies. So the enthusiasm is coming up. If we are able to reinforce it with intensity or intensified public education on the referendum, I believe that we will hit it and even cross maybe 50%. I am very hopeful.
Well,
I know you have your people on the ground too.
Yes,
what are they telling you?
We need to intensify.
Well, some of the things we picked up is that, yes, the parties are saying that they support it on platforms in various areas, but on the ground they haven't started, you know, educating the people. And I think that is where we feel that probably we need clarity so people don't go and they are confused and they vote wrongly. But it is also important to note that this is a joint assembly elections and a referendum on changing a rule. Yeah. To the extent that the parties are involved in the referendum, I think the numbers will go high. Okay. Whether the high turnout would yield 75%, then depends on that compromise. You see how they feel. But now, for me, the important thing is that once NDC says we support it, the two parties ought to find a way of how they trade off and they trade in to make sure that they carry them along, because you can't achieve 75% on your own. MPP can't. Neither will they get the two-thirds majority because they are the governing party.
Absolutely.
So somehow the electorate has decided this composition of parliament, and you have to use it to achieve your goals because there are going to be reforms if the yes vote goes in. Yeah. So what I think seriously is that in the regional referendum last year, you know that MPP and NDC campaigned together and it brought a higher number of
John
people.
Mahama was on the ground,
exactly, vice president and with others and so on. Is that spirit there? That is why we must hasten. And I like the recommendations it's making that, look, the governing party has greater responsibility to demonstrate that this is the agenda, because the president has made a decision in the national interest. He says, I want to give more executive powers and resources, so local economies will be more self-governing, governments will be more self-governing, develop the economy, and benefit everybody. That is a huge thing that previously it wasn't done. He's been able to get the support or the endorsement of the former presidents. He's been able to get NDC support in MPP. Yes, Kufuor is, yes, you know, we followed up when we saw the pictures and so on. We've talked to the former presidents, and what they want is, what are the details and how can it work to everybody's advantage? You know, once they become statesmen, they think more in terms of the nation. It's fascinating than they think about party, but they still have their party identities. Yes, whether you talk to President Kufuor or President, and if you take President Mahama, but for the fact that he's become a candidate, before he did that, when you talk to him, he talks in big picture terms. What is working and what is not working, that needs to be changed. So I think that there are factors that are working. Can we get the two parties to quickly get on the ground with education and so on for the referendum, not the assembly elections, you see? And that is key. That depends on how quickly they resolve the issue in Parliament.
Have 2 months to go. Tomorrow we have 2 months.
We will turn it around.
It could be done.
It can be done.
How?
If the two parties...
That's what you're proposing, the two parties come together.
I think, first of all,
have you seen movement already to get the two parties?
Yes, I think the problem we have now is because of the situation that occurred in Parliament in July.
Yes.
Okay, before they went on the recess. And that needs to be resolved very quickly. Because, first of all, I think because NDC has offered support and raised a number of articles that should be brought in, usually in the negotiations, you have to trade off. You have to take some on board.
In fact, the incumbent government has no option. Because they will need
you see, the two of them, yes, they need.
So they have to find a compromise.
And at the end of the day, it's the incumbent government's agenda, and they have everything to gain if they got the opposition support. So I think some conversations ought to intensify very quickly. I know that a number of civil society groups want to come together, you know, to see how best we can tell them, put Ghana first, agree on this. As it is, if you take sides, okay, what you do is that you polarize the situation. But let's advise them, because at the end of the day, it's the government's agenda. It's the president's agenda, and it's good for Ghana. And we need both. You can't do just 55-3 without also tackling 243. But it's a political reason. Political logic is as important as the rationale. So we need to look at how to handle that, and they must do it. Otherwise, we can lose it. If because of their conflict in Parliament, it reflects on the larger campaign, and therefore it's a no vote. Look, it's going to be very difficult to get this vote again, this referendum for many years to come.
It makes it very important. It makes it very important, this is almost a make or break moment for this democracy. If we lose the December 17 opportunity, it's gone. I mean, no party will touch it. But
the precedent will be scary.
Exactly. Nobody would like to touch this again in our history. In fact, those in the past who put in there, they come and say, I'm sorry,
we couldn't.
Now, for once, somebody, the president has said, let's push it through. Now on the table.
Yes.
That is how important this is. Now it's sort of sinking in my head.
Yes.
How important this is.
It's huge.
Isn't this why we must throw everything at it? And I'm not seeing that, unfortunately. Have you seen that? You say you're on the ground in the communities. I sit on radio. I haven't seen them. I know what happens when elections are approaching. There's a lot of excitement and energy. I haven't seen it. I haven't felt it.
Well, a lot of engagements have gone on, especially at the national level.
I mean, even for the president, until last week, Kumasi, when he made those comments, publicly, he's been quiet. Meanwhile, this is do or die for him.
The issue now is within the domain of the Minister of Local Government. Last week, the minister had a media encounter with all media houses. I saw the reps.
And the minister had agreed to speak to us. In fact, he spoke to us part of the conversation.
So that's part of the advocacy thing that is happening. The minister has a program of setting up committees at the local, at the district levels that will oversee the education and getting people aware of the issues.
Here's my other question. The party machinery right, which is really already established in these districts, which has been used to run elections, have they been activated? Because that is really where the game is.
Yes, I agree with you. There's a problem.
I haven't heard MPP say anything about this. I haven't heard NDC. I'm talking about party.
Yes.
I've heard their leaders at the top talk.
Yes.
Okay.
But the party machinery, the
ground.
ground game,
Yes.
I haven't seen the wheels of these party, election machines moving yet.
You're right.
Isn't that a problem?
Especially the party of the ruling
Government,
of the
yes,
ruling
absolutely. The
government.
MPP, yes.
They haven't done much. And I think that this platform should be an eye-opener to them. At least the message is that the president has sounded the warning that if there's any lapse, his image and integrity will be at stake, because it's a nice idea, and the way the president has approached it, I believe that he's giving it a national character. He met all the former presidents, spoke to them, they dialogued a lot, and then the blueprint was determined. And now a lot have gone on. We need to take the bull by the horn. But like Riley said, the party in government has a Herculean task. They could even do an engagement or undertake an engagement with the NDC and the PPP, because the three of them are all on board when it comes to the manifesto on the election of MMDCs. The national chairman of the MPP and his general secretary and his national executive will have to also play their role. They could be engaging the national leadership of the NDC on the sidelines to whip up the enthusiasm and to even kind of mend the rough edges. It can happen. So that the system is activated to educate.
Doug, a comment on that?
I think that at this stage, it's not only the parties, civil society organizations, groups are involved, and they're coming together in various, with all sorts of difficulties, but we think the right education should go. But I think, unlike the regional referendum and other campaigns, because this decision, we call it the Ghana First decision, is the president's thing. Probably we should hear more from him. Okay, he needs to talk to the nation about how important it would help move things because of the what I consider to be some misinformation that has taken place. The NCCE, for instance, said it's committed to correcting that misinformation, that the referendum is about MMDCE. It's not. It is about changing this rule about parties should they get in on. But when you hear from the president, I think he met former presidents, okay? He met parties, probably he's been doing it, but he needs to tell the nation. He's spoken in parliament, but he still needs to talk to the nation. The way he convinced former presidents to endorse this, he also has to tell the electorate, the wider electorate. So because that short time, he is the only person who carries that force of the national nature of the thing, and which is non-partisan. If he leaves it strictly to his party, parties play many games. It could be local, constituency, contest, who is eyeing what, and so on. But he's moving the whole nation. And I think with the former presidents behind, all hands on deck, I think we can achieve it. We can achieve it indeed.
Thank you very much. We're going to return to this conversation, definitely. We have 2 months to go. And as they've just adequately and eloquently illustrated, I think we've, safe to say, taken this for granted a bit. As we approach the finish line, we'll return to the conversation, hopefully bring in the minister again to talk about how the campaign to whip up enthusiasm towards it is concerned. But don't forget the date. It is the 17th of December. And don't be disappointed, because it's important. The question you can anticipate, I'm not saying that's how it's going to be framed, but something along the lines of, should we or you, or however they will frame it, allow political parties to participate in the election of assemblymen?
Yes.
Right? Yes or no? And you have to vote yes for, yes, I agree, parties should be involved, no, they should not be involved. That is what you should expect on December 17th, in addition to voting for your favorite assembly member in your community. Those two are key to watch out. And the government says vote yes. I'm yet to see a campaign vote no. I'm yet to see a vote no.
There are
campaign.
some.
There's some vote no campaign.
There are some scary ones.
Okay. Very interesting. So yes, enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll return to this conversation as we approach the date. 2 months to go. Countdown is on. Enjoy your evening.